This episode is brought to you by Studio Headphones. Head to studio.com, enter the word WhatCast at checkout, and receive 15% off your purchase. Once again, that's studio.com, SUDIO.com. Hey everybody, thanks for listening to the WhatCast.
We're still the WhatCast, and you're still listening.
Why don't you say it, Mike? Say it once and see how it feels for you.
Say what? What do you want me to say?
Hey,
you want me to do the...
Hey everybody.
Oh, okay. Hey everybody, welcome to the WhatCast.
Oh God.
We got a crazy show this week for you.
I hope to God I don't sound like that.
No, you don't at all. It was just my DJ impression.
Nice.
Yeah. Coming up next, we got a little AC/DC, a little Metallica.
You know, thinking about what music I listened to when I was in high school is depressing now. I recently found a podcaster where they review older albums very truthfully, and the people who are reviewing it are, pretty awesome musicians. So they're truthful about it. They're not going to lie. Everybody bought Limp Bizkit's first CD.
I did not.
Me neither, so...
I hated them from the get-go. I'm like, fuck you guys, you suck. For the most part, I listened to pretty decent music in high school, but there's a few, like, transitioning from, like, my senior year of high school into my early years of college is when the new metal thing, like, really took off, and some of that stuff I got really into. Like, this one band, I don't even think they ever got very big. They were called Slaves on Dope, and I fucking loved them. I listened to them recently, and holy balls were they bad.
I'm going to have to check them out to see how bad they are.
No. Yeah. Their single is called Pushing Me, and 19-year-old Mike was super into it.
Oh, man.
30-something Mike, not so much.
I can't wait to check this out.
And that's not even because it's metal, because I still fucking love metal. I go to a lot of heavy shows still and listen to it pretty frequently. One of my favorite bands is Between the Buried and Me, so it's not like, I've mellowed in my old age. It's just they were garbage. I used to like Kitty. Remember fucking Kitty?
Oh God, yeah. Everybody loved Kitty.
Yeah.
Everybody loved Ozfest.
I like to like. They were pretty indicative of Ozfest at the time. But I liked a lot of good stuff too, though, like Pantera and Candiria and shit like that. I loved all that older, like, groove thrash metal. Except I didn't get into Slayer until I was older. I never was really too into them when I was younger.
Same here. I had a buddy force them on me, and I was like, okay. My favorite album of theirs, well, not my most favorite album, I should say, but it's a cover album. They just did a bunch of cover songs, old punk songs.
Oh, I haven't even heard that. I really like Diabolus and Musica. That's my favorite album by them. It's so fucking good.
It is, dude. I was just re-listening to Testament's Demonic.
Yeah, I saw you posted that up on Instagram recently.
People, like Testament fans, hate that CD, but I fucking love that CD.
It's pretty heavy, man.
Yeah, it's great.
You know what I heard, speaking of blasts from the past? Fucking Wolverine Blues.
Are you kidding me?
Yeah, dude, it came on Liquid Metal on Sirius. I was so fucking pumped. I haven't heard that since, like, probably the 90s.
Yeah.
I forgot that song even existed. Yeah, good old Wolverine Blues. Anyway, we're starting the show with a tangent.
Yeah, since you guys are now thoroughly annoyed and partially disappointed, let's get to the show.
Usually we at least get 20 minutes in before we go off on a ridiculous tangent, but here we are. That's what happens when you have me start the show.
Yeah, let's blame it on that, and we'll keep.
That's I'm blaming you for forcing me into that. That was all you.
We'll keep that my job.
Yeah, please do.
So we've covered haunted things on the show, inanimate objects, but today we're going to cover something a little different. We're going to talk about possessed items.
Yeah, but not like the devil is in your ashtray. We're gonna stick with humanoid objects, dolls and statues and such.
Ooh.
Yeah, this idea though, you think of stories like Child's Play or any number of things like that. There's tons of them out there, but you think about things like that where a spirit is possessing an inanimate object and kind of living its life through this object. But this whole thing started with Genesis, like the story of human creation, and both in the Old Testament as well as the Jewish Talmud, they reference Adam as being created from mud. And, you know, when you think of the traditional golem, for instance, that is a magical construct that has been given life through divine means, and the life goes into this husk made of mud. And that's how Adam was initially created. And if you look at the story of Genesis, God created all the animals, God created all the plants, but for some reason, he chose to create man from mud or clay in some cases.
That's weird. I've never thought of that. That's true.
Yeah.
Everything else materialized, but he had to use something from the earth to create us.
That he already created. Yeah. And then he breathed the divine spark into us, and thus we have Adam. So it's an idea that goes back really far, and through the power of God, this golem was given life and the ability to be like any other animals and reproduce. But if you think about the story of creation, you've got Adam and Eve in the Garden of Eden. They're given everything they could ever want in the garden, and they have eternal life until they eat the fruit of knowledge, or the fruit from the tree of knowledge of good and evil. And once they do that, they become divinely inspired. Well, I shouldn't say divinely inspired, but they're no longer just this thing that exists to live and serve God. It's now a being in its own right. They were able to obtain the knowledge. And if you look at it that way, we were originally golems created by a master and given the order to basically serve. We would be given anything we wanted, but we had to serve and live by the rules that were put before us. But once we gained that knowledge, we understood that there was more to existence than that. We understood there was more to life than that, and that's when we truly became human. And because of that, we became mortal, and we were forced out of the Garden of Eden. So, according to that bit of mythology, we all started as golems. Humanity started as golems, and we got better. I guess.
We got better.
I mean, when you look in the Bible, it says that's the original sin, and for that, every human that's born is punished. And so essentially, life is our punishment because we didn't want to be mindless automatons anymore. We didn't want to live just to serve.
What if it wasn't mud? It was doo-doo.
Maybe. I mean, there were a lot of animals running amok.
Yeah. What if it wasn't a quick process? Like it was like some fermenting thing, and there's like this howling, screeching, muddy mess, just all for like a month.
He's got to pack all of the cow dung together and just let it bake in the sun. You'll become a man, damn you.
It's like this creature from The Fly, like a mistransportation creature.
Yeah, just this weird blob dog thing. So this tradition of the golem started with Judaism, because it was in the Talmud, and then the Old Testament is basically the same thing, tells the same story. But even in Jewish legends, there's a couple of stories, the most famous being the Golem of Prague. And in that, there's a few different variations of it, as there are with most legends. But the basic idea is that there was a rabbi named Judah Lo ben Bazaleel. Let me try that again. Named Judah Lo ben what? We'll just say the story centers on this Rabbi Judah Lo, and he was a rabbi in Prague in the 1700s, and he had this nickname of the Maharal. And during this time, apparently there was some sort of issue within Prague where the Jews were being targeted in anti-Semitic attacks, and he was afraid that they were going to be wiped out by the then Holy Roman Emperor Rudolph II. So he constructed this golem, and he named it Joseph.
Hey, Joe, go kill some people.
Yeah. And in Jewish mysticism, the creation of the golem is given life through a word that's typically etched into it or placed upon it in some way. And it's a divine word. Typically, the word is emet, E-M-E-T, which means truth. And the legend says that if you remove one of the letters, the leading E, it changes the word to met, which means death, and that will cause the destruction of the golem. But in this case, he had it was removable, the word that he put on him, and in some instances it was a sash, and some it was like a necklace thing, some he wore it on his head. But it had the divine word on it, and he would let it go throughout the streets to destroy anyone who would go against the Jews. And on Saturdays, he would remove the word so that the golem would rest, and he wouldn't create any havoc during the Holy Sabbath. And there's a few different versions of the story, like I said. One version says that this golem ended up falling in love, and when the woman he fell in love with rejected him because he was an artificial being made of stone brought to life through the Spirit of God, he became angry and went on a rampage, killing everybody. Didn't matter if they were Jewish or not. If he came across him, he was going to smash. Another one says that he was the defender, and the rabbi just retired him at some point.
Wow.
And what ended up happening to the body, there's a couple different things there as well. So in one story, the rabbi was able to remove the holy word from the golem, and it just fell apart. He was able to just basically destroy it. In another story, he retired the golem, and he put its body in a synagogue in Prague, and it was there just in case to be defended in Prague. He would call upon it again, and it would come forth and defend all of the Jews in the city. After that happened, apparently no one really gave much thought to it until the attic of the synagogue was renovated in 1883. And at that point, there was no evidence that the golem had been found. But legend has it that some people broke in and stole the golem and ended up entombing it in one of the graveyards in Prague. And apparently where this graveyard used to be, there's now a television tower that stands over it.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. There's a more recent legend that says that the golem was still in the attic during World War II, and one of the Nazis ended up breaking in and went up into the attic, and once he got to the golem, he tried to destroy it, and as he was attempting to destroy it, he died instead. So it's this story, to me, it seems, because of all the variations that exist on the story, it seems to me like it's more legend than anything, but there are some Orthodox Jews that believe that this story actually happened. And there's also a belief in some Jewish mystic circles that such a thing is still possible, that you can still create this artificial construct and bring it to life. And there's another story that's, it's not as famous as the Golem of Prague, but it's another Jewish legend. This one apparently took place earlier than the Prague story, but this one tells about a Rabbi Eliyahu, and he built this golem, and he basically created it to do work for him. It was a little butler. And in this instance of the story, he used the word emet and had it hanging around the golem's neck. And if he were to remove it, based on the magic he worked to create it, if he were to remove that name hanging from his neck, then he would be reduced to dust. And what ended up happening in this story is the golem apparently continued to grow after he built it. And as it aged, it grew bigger and bigger. And the rabbi, fearing that the golem would grow so big it would destroy the universe, the planet, if it was a planetary threat, whatever. But if it's going to destroy the universe, nope. So he had to climb up onto the golem and remove the name. And in this story, there's two versions of where this word was. And one, it was on a name, basically a name tag that hung around its neck. And others had it engraved onto the golem's forehead. So in one, he just had to remove the name tag. In the other one, he actually had to strike one of the letters off of the forehead in order to get it to go from truth to death.
Now, what type of life force is supposed to be inhabiting these stone structures when they bring them to life?
According to the beliefs, it's divine energy from God. So it's not, I guess it's not really like a spirit, but you'd have to think, if like in the Golem of Prague, in one of the variations where it falls in love, like that's not just like energy, like you don't plug a robot in and it falls in love. You like, my computer's plugged in right now. My computer's not going to fall in love and then get all pissed off when it gets rejected. My vacuum cleaner isn't going to get all, that's just energy going into it. And that's what's powering it. So it must be some sort of spirit that's maybe it's an angel. It's not really clear on that. It's said to be the divine energy. So going back to Genesis again, if Adam was a golem and then he was given the divine energy to go about daily life in the Garden of Eden, but then he received the knowledge and that's when he became human, then where did the golem get it from? Was it something that was learned by humans? Or, you'd have to think that the being would be capable of that. So maybe what's going on here is the mystic is using the same tactic that God in the Old Testament used to create life. Maybe there's a secret to it, and maybe you're trapping some sort of divine being or spiritual being inside this construct to give it life, but based on the way that you're working the magic or the prayers or whatever, you're reducing it to an automaton rather than a freely thinking being.
That's exactly what I thought. Maybe these people were creating the very first step of making a person.
Mm-hmm.
Using the original method, Hey,
it's the original sauce.
Yeah, that's a fascinating way to look at it.
Yeah. But there's been characters like this throughout history and mythology, like Galatea, the statue, its sculptor fell in love with it and pled to Aphrodite to he was embarrassed to say he wanted to fuck his statue. So he's like, can you find me a wife that is exactly like my statue? And she's like, fuck it, we'll just turn the statue to life. So he gets home and he kisses the statue. He's gently caressing on it, and he's like, oh, you're not a statue anymore. You're a real woman. So then he married her. And then there's the story of Talos, who was a giant automaton made of bronze, who was created to protect from pirates and invaders.
Nice.
And he would circle the island of Crete 3 times a day. So, I mean, there's lots of stories of these beings giving life through divine means. And I don't even want to call them beings. They're constructs is what they are.
Yeah, I really like the avenue of thinking that they've got to be possessed by something. It can't just be a natural, like, and an energy, like you said. It's got to have some knowledge to it. Like you said, to fall in love, or maybe like just the duty to protect, maybe? Is that enough to say it has its own thought, or?
Giving something the idea to protect, that just seems like that would be something you could program.
Like a spell or something?
This is your function. You are to travel the city, and anyone that's not a Jew, you will smash their skulls in. Or you will circle this island, and if you see anybody with a parrot on their shoulder and an eye patch, you will smash them.
Just train it. You hate parrots. Fuck parrots.
Yeah. You hate parrots, you hate rum, and you hate eye patches. And skulls and crossbones. Smash them all. But so these are like the divinely inspired ones. But there's also a lot of cases where it goes the other way, where it's possessed by an evil spirit or a demon. And anyone who grew up in our age groups, they have a healthy fear of clowns and dolls because of it and Child's Play. And so growing up in the 80s and 90s, everybody, and also coincidentally at the time, you had Cabbage Patch dolls and My Buddy. So, you had on one hand Chucky, who is basically a take on My Buddy.
Yeah, and I had a My Buddy growing up, and I did not. I had friends who were scared of it before the Chucky movie came out. There was, really? Yeah, they were uncomfortable around that thing. It just, it was instantly weird for some people.
Yeah, well, it is kind of weird, and there's a lot of older things. Well, I don't even want to say they're older because they're I don't know. I think it was their vacant stare and their smug smile. And their stupid haircut. Fuck you, My Buddy.
I think it has a lot to do with the clown thing. It's just some weird thing that people are scared of.
Yeah. But my, I'm going to have to take a picture of it. Maybe we can put it in the show notes. But my girlfriend has this really creepy monkey doll. And the boys and me were really freaked out by it. But she insists on keeping it around. She's had it since she was really little, and it was old when she got it. So it was given to her by her uncle, and I think it was his kids or something when they were little. So it's like easily 50, 60 years old, if not older. But it's this monkey. It's not even a monkey. It's a chimpanzee wearing overalls, red overalls. I think they're red. They're overalls anyway. And she's ripped out a lot of the hair. The face is all old, and it's got like marks on it. The hands and fingers have been chewed on. Like, it just looks really fucking creepy. Like, looking at it, it seems like it would be in a horror movie. And she insists there's nothing scary about it. It's cute. Look at it. I'm like, no, it's horrifying. But there's a lot of cases, and I guess now it's kind of coming back around. Chucky is making a comeback. There's been a couple new Child's Play movies, and they actually good ones where they kind of undo the comedy stuff that they had been doing the past decade or so, and they're trying to make it scary again. And they're actually pretty good. The most recent one was on Netflix called The Cult of Chucky, and it's a direct sequel from the one that came before it. And they're really fucking good, man. They go back to like the original two, which I think hold up to this day.
Wow.
But then you also have the popularity of the Annabelle movies. And I've honestly never seen the Annabelle movies, but I saw the first Conjuring movie, and after seeing the Annabelle doll, I couldn't help but roll my eyes. Like, it's obviously a doll that was created to be scary. It's not a doll that's scary because it's scary.
Or supposedly haunted.
Yeah. Like, someone was clearly, like, thinking, we need to make a creepy looking doll for this movie. And then they came up with that Annabelle design. So, have you seen any of the Annabelle movies?
No, I haven't.
All right. I haven't either. So I don't know how closely they stick to the story. Are you familiar with the original story?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's a good one, man. And but the thing is, it's associated with the Lorraine, so instantly I have to call bullshit on it.
Yeah, that's my only drawback for that case is the Warrens.
But I mean, the people involved seem to be backing each other up, and at the time, they were all in agreement with what had happened. But I guess the story goes that there was two friends. They were nurses. One of them was given a doll as a gift from her mother, and she had it at the apartment that she shared with her friend. And she started noticing that it would move while she was gone. And the original Annabelle doll, for anyone that didn't know, was a Raggedy Ann doll that was basically about the size of a toddler. It was a big, heavy Raggedy Ann doll. But her mom had given it to her. She left it on her bed, but she started noticing that it would move while she was gone. And at first she thought, it could have just been coincidence. It would have been it wasn't significant movement at first. It would be like she would leave it. Whenever she would set it down, it would always be in a sitting position with its legs out in front of it and its arms at its side. And she would come home, and sometimes the legs would be crossed. Sometimes the arms would be crossed. Sometimes it would be in different positions on the bed. So then she started testing it. And she would she'd put it in a very distinct way before she left so that she would know if anything happened to it. And she would come home, and most times it would be moved in some way. So then she started worrying that people were fucking with her and maybe breaking into the house, because she started seeing these notes written in pencil on parchment paper. And she said there was no parchment paper in the house at the time, but it would say things like "help me" and "help Lou," and Lou was one of their friends.
So wait, these notes on parchment paper would appear in her house?
Yeah, she would leave, and then she would come home and she'd find these notes on parchment paper written in what looked like a child's handwriting.
Damn.
Yeah. So she started to get kind of freaked out that someone was breaking into the house and fucking with her. So she started setting things up in a way that, like, for instance, the rug in front of the door, she would fold a piece of it over or something so that if someone were to walk over it, it would change the position of it. Or she would just move things in a certain way so that she would be able to tell or mark the door or mark the window. Just to, if anyone moved it, closed it, it wouldn't line up perfectly. But she noticed that none of the stuff had been moved at all. The only thing that had been moved was the doll. So she started getting freaked out because of the notes, and she didn't find any evidence that people were coming in and playing pranks or fucking with them. And the doll started appearing in different rooms. At one point, she came home at night after her shift, and she found blood on the back of the doll's hand. And there were 3 drops of blood that were on its chest. And they got really freaked out. They called the medium. And this medium came and said it was a little girl that died on the property named Annabelle Higgins. And she was 7 years old, and she used to play in the fields before the apartments that they were living in were built. She said that the ghost has been here for a while, but because everybody that's around there is grown-ups and they're only concerned with their jobs and adult things, she didn't feel like she could relate to them. But because these two women were young nurses, she felt like she could relate to them a little better. So she was trying, this is all according to the medium, mind you, the spirit of Annabelle Higgins was trying to get their attention so that she could communicate with them. And through the medium, the spirit asked them if she could stay with them. And what she had been doing up to this point was just moving the doll, but she wanted their permission to move into the doll, like possess the doll. So, feeling bad for the spirit of this lonely little girl, they said, of course. And they started referring to Raggedy Ann as Annabelle and treating it like it was a 7-year-old girl, talking to it and letting it hang around the house and everything. But then things started to go sour, and the doll continued to move. Their friend Lou, who, if you remember back when they were leaving the notes, said, help Lou. And their friend Lou started getting this weird feeling about it. And he even claimed to the Warrens that he felt like it was a voodoo doll. But, it doesn't, I think that's just, he didn't understand what a voodoo doll was, and he knew it was like some evil doll thing. So he just attributed it to that. But he said that the doll would give him nightmares, and it led to a point where he couldn't tell sometimes if things were dream or if he had awoken from the dreams to see what was going on. But he said at one point there was one incident that he knew was not a dream. He was in a deep sleep, and then he woke up, and he says he remembers waking up and it felt like something was wrong. And he looked around his room and nothing seemed out of place. He didn't see anything weird. But then as he scanned down his body towards the end of the bed, he saw the Annabelle doll at his feet. And he said it slowly glided up his body and over his chest, and then it stopped. And it put its arms out, and it put one arm on each side of his neck. And Raggedy Ann dolls, they don't have hands. They just have these little fucking stubs. But he said it felt like he was being strangled. Like hands were around his neck and he was being strangled. And he said he tried to push the doll off of him, but it may as well have been a wall because it wouldn't move. It was just this force over him, choking him. And he couldn't move at all. But that wasn't the only time that he was attacked. On another occasion, he was with one of the girls in the apartment. They were hanging out. It was later at night. He said it was between 10 and 11. And he was preparing to go for a road trip the next day, so he was looking over his maps. Keep in mind, this is the 70s. There was no GPS at the time. And everything was quiet in the house when all of a sudden he heard sounds from one of the girls' room. Her name was Donna. She wasn't home at the time, but it was in her room. She's the one that actually owned the doll. And he said it sounded like someone had broken through the window and was rummaging around in the room. So he crept up really quietly to the door, and he opened the door. And once he opened the door, the noises stopped. And he looked around. Nothing seemed out of place. No windows were open. There was no one in there. But he saw the Annabelle doll. It looked like it was just crumpled in a corner. So he went over and he picked it up. And he started feeling there was a presence behind him. So he turned around, and he doesn't know. Either he doesn't know or he doesn't like to talk about it, but basically what happened, according to the other girl that was there, is that he turned around and nobody was there, but then all of a sudden he yelled out in pain, and kind of doubled over. And she ran in and he was bleeding. And so they bleeding out from his chest. So she helped him take his shirt off to get a look at what it was. And he had what looked like claw marks. She said there were 4 horizontal and 3 vertical. But she said they weren't like cuts. It looked more like they had been burned into his skin.
So I think it's safe to assume at this point that Annabelle is not a 7-year-old girl.
Yeah, that's probably safe to say.
Don't believe him, guys.
Yeah. But I mean, and obviously the Warrens ended up coming in and they took Annabelle and locked her in a box with pages from the Bible and a devil tarot card attached to the box with a sign that says, "Do not open. It's the super evil thing that'll eat your soul."
That note's scary though, dude. Every time I see the picture of the Annabelle doll, like if you just found that in the street, if it had that warning on it, I wouldn't touch it.
No, fuck no. I mean, actually, I probably would because if I didn't have kids, I probably would.
Now, how long would it take to freak you out if you had a doll and it was just doing those small movements like that? I mean, would you chalk that something up to you not remembering what happened or?
Yeah, when it's something subtle like that, and that's something we always talk about when it comes to hauntings and possession. They always start out small. They always start out with little things, and really the more attention you bring to it, the better. Well, the better for them, I should say. But it gives them the strength. And then you call the medium in and you're basically opening the floodgates. You're initiating contact at that point. And that's giving it the strength to come through and actually start some shit. Before it was just like, you know what, I'm just going to throw this doll in the corner. And you're going to be like, hey, that wasn't in the corner, but, that's weird. And there'll be that little twinge of fear, like, what if something was there? And then whatever it is feeding off of that fear. But this is, like I said, if it wasn't for the Warrens, I would really love this case. But it's the fucking Warrens, man.
Yeah, it's the perfect ghost / haunting / possession story. But it fucking Warrens.
And a lot of skeptics think that they may have gotten the inspiration for this story based on Robert the Doll. Are you familiar with that one?
No, I've never heard of Robert the Doll.
Wow. All right. You can edit this out, but just Google image Robert the Doll.
Okay.
Just so you can see what he looks like.
Hey everybody, sorry to interrupt, but real quick, a little bit of business. Recording and editing the show, I have headphones on my head about 80% of every day. No joke. And throughout the years, I've used many headphones. I've spent as little as $15 to $200. And I can honestly say nothing compares to studio headphones. We here at the Whatcast use them exclusively. And if you go to their website, studio.com right now, and enter the word Whatcast at checkout, they'll give you 15% off your purchase. To be completely honest with you guys, these are literally the best headphones I've ever used. We use them exclusively. We won't use anything else. And that's has nothing to do with their awesome customer service and how they've treated us. It's just that their headphones are that good. And my last pair of Bluetooth headphones, it says in the directions, 4-hour charge time, 2-hour usage time. I've had these headphones for about 3 weeks and I think I've charged them 3 times. I'm not kidding. And that's with everyday use. So head over to studio.com, enter the words Whatcast at checkout, get 15% off, and enjoy some awesome quality headphones. All right, so I'm looking at Robert the Doll, and I gotta say, what the fuck? What the fuck? How is that a doll? How did that even start as a doll?
All right, so this doll, Robert the Doll, this is one that also inspired the Child's Play movies as well. So in addition to the Warrens' most likely bullshit story, it also inspired Chucky. So, but it was a doll that was owned by this man named Robert Eugene Otto. And he was an artist and he was kind of a weirdo, but he belonged to a prominent family in the Key West, Florida area. The doll itself was manufactured by a German company, and it was bought by Robert Otto's grandfather while he went to a trip to Germany in 1904. And it was given to Robert Otto as a birthday gift when he was young. The sailor suit that it's wearing is a sailor suit that was worn by Otto when he was a child.
Oh, God.
Yeah. And this doll lived in the Otto family home since Robert Otto was a child. And it's a house on Eaton Street in Key West, Florida. As Robert grew older, he went to college in New York and ended up going to Paris to study art. And he ended up getting married in 1930. And once they got married, they moved into this house where the doll still resided. And Robert Otto died in 1974. His wife died 2 years afterwards. And then after they had died, the house with the doll still in it was sold to another woman who owned it for 20 years. Again, with the doll still in it. And then the property ended up getting sold, and it now is being operated as a guest house. But in 1994, so it would have been when the woman sold the house to the current owners, the doll was donated to the East Martello Museum, which is in Key West. And you can see it there still to this day. It's still there. So you can go check it out and see the weird stuff that goes on. But according to people that delve in this sort of subjects, this doll is possessed. It's able to apparently change its facial expressions. It moves on its own. And a lot of people report hearing giggling sounds when they're near it.
Now, are the previous owners of this house reporting this, or the people at this museum?
It's people that come in contact with the doll itself.
Oh, wow.
So anyone who's spent a lot of time with the doll will talk about how its expressions change, and it'll like move its head or be in different positions from when last they checked it or left it. So as weird as all that is, there's a lot of unconfirmed backstories that kind of lend a more legendary status to it, I think. One of the stories is that the doll itself, it was a gift given to the grandfather by a young girl from the Bahamas, and it was given to him as in some stories as a gift, but in other stories it was given to him as retaliation for some wrong that he committed against her or her family. There's other stories that claim that the doll was able to control voodoo figures that were also in the room, and some people claim that the doll is aware of what goes on around him, and it listens and watches people.
Yikes.
And then there's legends that claim that the doll disappeared from the house after Robert Otto died, and that it had been found later and put in the museum. And then there's other stories that say it was Robert Otto himself that was the one that triggered the supernatural goings-on surrounding the doll. And he would... I guess the idea behind this one would be more in tune with a tulpa, in that whenever he would do something wrong, he would blame the doll, so that the doll kind of became the whipping boy for him, so to speak. It was always the doll's fault, and by doing this, he created this kind of living thing in a way. I mean, I guess you wouldn't call it living, an animated thing, because of his... We've talked about tulpomancy and thought forms and things like that before, so it's, if you want more, I'm not going to go too off on the subject now. You can find the old episode about it, but basically the short story is, through your concentration and will, you're able to create a manifestation. And in this case, he created some sort of semblance of intelligence within this doll.
Now, do you think that would happen more of an enchantment on that doll, or some type of ability that this Otto dude had?
Who's to say, man? I don't know. I don't think that, at least from what I know, that he was involved in any sort of black magic. But I could be wrong. I don't know.
Just imagine if it was done by the previous owner, and there's
Well, that's one of the stories, is that the grandfather was given to him from the girl from the Bahamas. So the idea there is that maybe she was the one that either put a curse on it or put the spirit inside of it.
That's horrifying to think that there's thousands of objects in the world floating around that could have a spirit that somebody put in it.
Right. Yeah. And there's legends in the area. This seems more like urban legends, based around the celebrity status of this doll, I think. But the doll has apparently been responsible for car accidents and people losing their jobs, or pretty much any misfortune or malediction that happens to people that have come in contact with the doll is blamed on the doll. Especially people that, I guess there's a high percentage of people that go to the museum and mock the doll, like take it as a joke rather than treat it with respect. They seem to suffer the most misfortune after visiting it. But I don't know. To me, that seems like tall tales and urban legends.
Oh, yeah. Again, with the whole doll and clown thing, it's really easy to add whatever you want to embellish the story and make it creepier. It's a creepy doll. Especially
when it's already a ghost story. Like, I feel like a lot of ghost stories that we know and love, that's how it happened. Like, I mean, just take this Annabelle thing, for instance. It's got a whole series of movies based around it.
Mm-hmm.
But Robert the doll was the first to get really famous. But I mean, there's the idea of the voodoo dolls too, which it's a lot different, but it's using some sort of spirit connection between this doll and another living thing to enact the will of the one controlling the doll on the victim.
That's always been a strange thing, is voodoo dolls. I mean, that's some awesome power to be able to enchant something to transfer the effects of what it goes through. That's a weird thing.
Yeah, it is. And what's even weirder about it is when you think of voodoo dolls, you think of like witch doctors or voodoo priestess. And it's a lot of people associate it with the practice of voodoo or Haiti cultural things, but it actually has its origins in Britain.
Yeah, they have ancient texts that say, this doll was made to do this to this person. It doesn't come from, I mean, it's even called a voodoo doll and has nothing to do with, its origins don't have anything to do with voodoo anyway.
No. And it would be, in a lot of magical texts, an effigy of the intended victim is a requirement, whether it be made out of wax or cloth. I guess in Britain, the tradition was to make dolls. They would make a doll of a witch out of rags, and then they'd pierce them with the intention being to inflict pain on the witch. And if they were able to inflict pain on the witch, then she wouldn't be able to bewitch them. So it was initially used as a practice to keep a witch from taking control over you.
Wow. So using a voodoo doll was something that everybody should do.
I guess if you're being haunted by a witch. But I guess this whole thing linking it with the Haitian culture and voodoo was a way to... Basically, it was a way to demonize the black man even further.
Yeah, I'm sure.
And kind of make it so their cultural practices weren't as welcome. And they did this by pointing to them working black magic. And this one dude, John Houston Craig, he wrote a book in 1933 called Black Baghdad, The Arabian Nights Adventures of a Marine Captain in Haiti. And in this book, he described Haitian prisoners sticking pins into a voodoo doll with the intent of producing illness in the victim. So with all this sort of representation on these cultures that are very different from American culture at the time, it just kind of helped to further create that racial divide and make it an us versus them sort of mentality rather than an inclusive mentality. And that's racism in America was, especially around this time, I believe it was 1939 though, but that's what caused the prohibition of cannabis, because William Randolph Hearst created this word marijuana and said that Mexicans were coming in, smoking marijuana and raping white women. Most of the people, they thought marijuana was completely different from cannabis. Cannabis was fully legal in the United States at that point. But because it was discovered that he was referring to cannabis when he was using this word marijuana, the government decided to prohibit it. So the prohibition of marijuana was all based on racism.
And there's a lot of people who link the whole like paper industry and all that shit to the prohibition of marijuana as well.
Yeah. Well, and then later on, the reason for the continued existence being the pharmaceutical industries and petroleum industries. I mean, you can make plastic from hemp or products similar to plastic from hemp. So you don't need the petroleum companies producing all this plastic, and hemp's biodegradable. Better for the environment. Anyways, this isn't a show talking about marijuana prohibition. I just wanted to throw it in as an aside, but it's the Whatcast. We do the tangent thing. Bookend the show with tangents.
Well, I'm never gonna buy anything from Goodwill again.
Yeah, not any dolls anyway. But I think there's a lot to it, though. There's, especially when you think about, and when I say I think there's a lot to it, that's not to say that I think these stories are true. They all seem to have the air of urban myth or legend behind it. Even though the contemporary case of Annabelle, we've got witnesses that are making the claim, that doesn't make it true. I mean, the Warrens have been caught out several times with misrepresenting people or making a bigger deal out of smaller events, things like that. So, but what I mean by I think there's something to it is I do feel that given the right amount of intent or ability to communicate with the other side, that these sort of things are possible, that you can use inanimate object to house some sort of being or entity, and or it might not even be a being or entity. It could just be a tulpa. You give enough power and thought and intent to this thing, and it could come to pass. Especially if you're one of those new age people that buy into that whole The Secret thing. Like if you believe The Secret works, then this is right in line with that. Being able to create a being or intelligence, I guess, through force of will and thought and intent. Just throw it all out into the universe and see what sort of clusterfuck chimera comes back with.
When we hear about stories like this, that's just exactly what they are. They're stories. Somebody can come and make a report or a claim about shit that happened, seeing something that's not there anymore. But do you find pause when people bring forward stuff like this that's just could be examined, that they have on display now, that could be easily debunked? I mean, we've all seen the great Randy debunkings on TV shows. So people put themselves in a situation to where they're going to look like an asshole. So we know that's true.
And I think that's definitely the case with the Warrens, because if it's that possessed by evil, like take it out, let somebody play with it. Keep a camera on it for 24 hours a day and just let it chill and see what happens. Because I guarantee you nothing will happen.
Mm-hmm.
Guarantee it. But then again, with all the attention that's being put on it, maybe now is the time when something actually would. There's more attention put on the Annabelle doll now than when the event actually happened. And I know in the movies, the Annabelle doll looks different, but with a lot of these cases or a lot of these movies where it says based on a true story, that gets people interested and they want to find out what the real story is behind it. So that's putting more attention on this doll, with a lot more people thinking about it and thinking about how this doll is being possessed. So all of a sudden you've got this thing in the public consciousness saying this Annabelle doll is possessed by some sort of evil thing. So maybe now it really is, because it was like some sort of tulpa created by the movie industry by creating this cultural phenomenon that is Annabelle. I shouldn't even say cultural. It's not cultural, but you know what I mean.
Yeah.
It's a well-known thing now. It's not some obscure haunting case. This is in the mainstream firmly. There's a third sequel coming out.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So that's 4 movies that have featured Annabelle now. There's The Conjuring, then the 2 Annabelle movies, and there's going to be a third one coming out. So 4 movies focusing on this Annabelle doll, this allegedly real doll that is possessed by some sort of evil spirit that wants to choke and cut Lou.
Shit.
Why can't they ever be fun? Why can't you get like a haunted doll that wants to make you sandwiches and give you back rubs?
Yeah, tickle your feet a little bit.
No, I would be pissed if it wanted to tickle my feet. I would kick it out. But if it wants to make me a sandwich or rub my back, maybe tell me a bedtime story, I'm totally into that. That doll can live with me all day. Just don't go choking me and trying to cut me with imaginary stumpy fingernails, and don't write creepy letters and do creepy things. Like, if you're gonna chill, just chill, man. What I need is one of those golems that can do stuff for him, but I don't want him to be a growy golem. He can't grow to destroy the universe. I just want good old fashioned regular stone golem that'll just kind of hang out and make me sandwiches.
Play Tony Hawk Pro Skater 2 with you?
No.